Mute on.
Oh, gosh.
You got me?
Yeah,
Okay.
there you go. You're started. Go.
All right, welcome in. Little Inside Bulldog Illustrated. We got a panel here bigger than those stupid ESPN shows with about 50 people. Vance was not kind enough to inform me he wasn't going to be here, so I don't know where the hell he is. Greg's running the show. There's Shannon. The iconic Murray Poole is with us. I guess is Logan with us?
Yeah.
Logan.
And who am I leaving out?
Shannon, Trent.
All right, Shannon and Trent.
And
All right.
And we're sponsored by Hillshire Sausage this week.
Well, I like Hillshire Sausage. It'd be a good thing to go out there and tailgate it up Saturday, getting ready for LSU. And Greg, I guess let's start with you real quick. Kind of the traffic. It's just so unusual to have 3 top 10 games here in the first month of the season, and that's 3 and 4 games, 3 and 5 weeks here for Georgia. Really unprecedented type stuff. How's the traffic been on the websites?
Traffic's been really good. Obviously, with these 3 games, people are very interested. After the Clemson game, of course, as I told you guys at the time, traffic kind of dove, but South Carolina brought it up, and there was good traffic, good Georgia response for North Texas. This week's been very good. What we need to do is win this game, and internet traffic worries will be over for a while.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's such a difference here. The gulf between being 3 and 1 and 2 and 2 is enormous. And Vance, you kind of go back to last year's Florida game. Beat Florida, lost to Alabama, lost to Clemson, beat South Carolina. So those top 10 games, that's 2 and 2. This is just enormous for Georgia to win for so many reasons. The parallels between the 2 programs here in the 21st century has been incredible. Basically, Georgia has a season in 02 that LSU has in 03. The sun shines on them. The 2 teams have the same season in 07. It breaks right for LSU. But with the beating they put on Georgia in the Dome back in 2011, 2 years ago, this is a big measuring stick too, Vance, just to see how far this Georgia team has come here in the last year and a half.
Well, and I think the big thing is every time Georgia's had a brush with getting some national prominence, unfortunately, that they've kind of dumped it. So, I mean, this game is the ability to go 3 and 1 with an amazingly tough schedule. And, I mean, we go into October and everyone's like, yeah, Georgia really is for real. Or we lose and it's 2 and 2 and it's like one more time. They were highly ranked and they couldn't really live up to the billing. So, I mean, to me, it's a barometer for where the program is. I mean, are we yet again,
Well, just lost Vance here for a second. So, Murray, there have been so many great games between Georgia and LSU through the years, and it's great to talk to you here. And, the memories there, I certainly remember in 98 what Quincy Carter did. Georgia got that great win, 28-27. Murray, you remember Lindsey Scott back in 78? That's probably my other favorite Georgia LSU game.
Oh, sure do, Jeff. A great kickoff return in Baton Rouge, and like you said, Quincy Carter put on a show down there in the Red Stick also, and it's been great games. These 2 teams haven't played, like much as our major rivals, but certainly the games they played have been momentous, and certainly a big one we had in the Dome and a big one we lost in the Dome against them. But, of course, the A.J. Green thing, I still look back on that and it seemed like we got a bad call that kind of took that game away from us at the end. But I expect this one Saturday is going to be just down to the wire, just tooth and grind, fighting nail and tooth, any way you want to do it. 2 evenly matched teams, and I think the question is, Jeff, who's going to stop the other's running game? That's what it's all going to boil down to Saturday between the hedges.
Well, you're right. It does come down to the trenches, and Shannon, that's what worries me the most. I mean, you're looking at Ego Ferguson, you're looking at Anthony Johnson, and that great big defensive line. So this was one of these. I was only half joking about it on my talk show all week. Kind of one of those Pat Dye is Georgia man enough moments, and this game is going to be won in the trenches here, Shannon. So we're really going to see just how tough Georgia is on Saturday afternoon.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, from a statistical standpoint, these are 2 evenly matched teams, and also from a vision test, these are 2 equally matched teams. I think Georgia, Hicks is going to play probably the biggest role he's played so far. Lynch is going to have another big role. for Georgia this week. I think the advantage, though, if the offensive line can do what it's supposed to do, Murray's going to have a lot of targets, and he's going to have a lot of opportunities on the outside, to beat them downfield and for Georgia to have some big plays. But, it's going to start with Quavon and with Gurley and Marshall and those guys just trying to, slowly get that defensive line, if it's even possible, tired by the third and fourth quarter.
Well, Trent, you're the recruiting guru there. I'm sure there are a million prospects coming. Is my man Raekwon McMillan going to be here this week? I know this is a type of game, if Georgia could win with a great atmosphere, that it might be able to sway a couple of those 5 stars Georgia's way.
Well, right now they got over 40 targets that we've confirmed that they have on campus. Raekwon is one of them. A couple more 5 stars will be on campus. David Sharp, the big offensive tackle from Florida, and if you follow his visits, he would visit Clemson game where Georgia played. He was in Athens the next week for the South Carolina game, and then back again for the LSU game. So that's 3 visits in 5 weeks for him. And, of course, Lorenzo Carter will be back on campus.
Yeah, and I would guess those 3 targets are certainly up at the top of the list there. All right, Logan, I'm sure you're a regular over. You've learned how to get those free dinners there at those Tuesday press conferences there. What were some of the highlights of what Coach Richt had to say earlier this week?
Yesterday, let's see, we talked a lot about, just LSU coming up, and he talked like you did. It's the most well-balanced offense we've seen all year. He praised Jeremy Hill in the running game that he has. He praised Zach Mettenberger with his ability to drop back and throw, and we haven't seen that this year. We've seen several dual-threat quarterbacks, drop back and run any second, but we've yet to have the running back that can pound it right at us with the quarterback who can drop back and throw if we start to cheat on the run. So Rick's well aware of that, and it's like I think Murray mentioned a minute ago. It's going to be a nice, even, smash mouth game between the hedges this weekend.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Greg, Jeremy Hill, they've got good backs, but Hill's a difference-making back. I think Gurley's the best in the country. Hill might be number 2 or number 3, and then with those receivers, they've got 2, and Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry, they're just dynamic. And kind of going back to something that Logan kind of mentioned there, maybe one thing that'll help Georgia a little bit, as good as Mettenberger is, big guy standing back there heaving it, though, maybe him being more of that stationary target will help the pass rush just enough on Saturday.
Yeah, I think it may. Obviously, Murray and I were talking before the show, and Murray made the valid point that Georgia's got to stop the inside running game, which is something they haven't done in a couple of years. But most of those big runs or big games, when people had big games running on Georgia, they also had a mobile quarterback. And in this case, LSU certainly does not. Mettenberger's a fine quarterback. He's got a cannon for an arm, but as I said earlier, he runs like I do, and that's not very fast. So hopefully Georgia's 2 premier edge rushers can get a lot of heat on him, worry him, pressure him, sack him, and in addition to getting the running game stopped up the middle, if that can happen and get pressure on Mettenberger, it should be a good day for the Dogs.
Yeah, it definitely does come back to stopping the run. And Vance, I think Shannon mentioned this earlier too. I know Georgia went with a lot of one-back sets against North Texas, but I mean, with Gurley in there, I think with this LSU run defense, and then certainly what you'll see the next week with Tennessee and A.J. Johnson, and I think you're going to have Georgia with a fullback in there 90-95% of the time to help clear that hole out for Todd Gurley.
Well, yeah, and the big thing that I worry about is what do we do if we were to get down early? I think we definitely have a history of, unlike Nick Saban, who's, he can be down to 10 or 14 to Texas A&M, and the way he punches back is he shoves it right down their throat. As we know, following Georgia, a lot of times if we get down early, sometimes we abort the pass, and as you've said many times, Danzler, Aaron Murray is not effective throwing the ball 30 to 35 to 40 times, and pretty much any of his big losses to big teams, he's thrown the ball that many times, and a lot of times it's because we got frustrated, got down early, and we basically said we're not, we aborted the run.
That's a great point. And Murray, I know you've been watching Georgia for a long, long time here, and Georgia's had a lot of fast players through the year. But going back to that, with Gurley in that running game and the advantageous coverage situations that it gives you, we saw Georgia cash in on that. And I'll tell you, Murray, Rapid Reggie Davis and Justin Scott Wesley, the fastest man with 3 first names there, they're probably 2 of the fastest players that I can remember Georgia having, at least having 2 guys like that on the same team.
That's right, Jeff. And, Georgia's speed, they've had some great ones in the years. You go back all the way to Kent Lawrence, on that 68 team, this guy was about a 9.600, and you could just name the speedsters we've had. But these 2 guys are both, almost Olympic track speed. Herschel, of course, maybe a 4.2 guy, unparalleled with his Olympic or world-class speed. But these 2 guys, like I said in a little piece today for our website, they've got the ability to get behind anybody at any time. And like you say, it's going to happen because Todd Gurley makes it happen in our big fullback blocking. And I'm like you, Jeff. I did that little piece recently for the website. I moved Gurley up to number 2 behind Herschel. It was the greatest running backs in Georgia history. He just had it all, the whole package. And I think that last week's team, the Mean Green, did a good job selling out to stop that run. But I think if LSU does that to that extent, Murray's really going to make them pay in that secondary. So we look for Todd Gurley to go well up over 100 this week, and Georgia balance it out is what it's going to take to win the football game.
Yeah, I think you're right, Murray, and I went ahead and proclaimed Gurley number 2 before the season, and he's done nothing to take away from that. Hey, Shannon, I don't know how much you really watched the game last week. One thing I did like to see, and I was paying a good bit of attention to the trenches there, got a lot more snaps for Jonathan Taylor, and then Chris Mays got in for the first time. So I was glad to see 2 of those bigger, beefier, athletic guys, because one of the deals against Clemson and South Carolina, I just thought there were too many times when Georgia was too light on that front. So I really liked what I saw out of Taylor and Mays, and I would assume, and Toby Johnson also, I'd assume those bigger guys are going to get a lot more snaps against LSU.
Oh, I agree totally, and I think that was part of the magic of having a team like North Texas right before the LSU game. They were an LSU light, type opportunity for Georgia to really have an in-game preparation. And you could see with the rotations that were happening that was Georgia's plan, to get them out there, get them some real game experience, because, you have to, in a big-time SEC game like this, you've got to plan for the worst. You got to plan for that injury that happens, in the first few minutes of the game, and you've got to have that secondary player ready to step in there. And from a beef standpoint, I mean, it's going to be one of those where, let's use as much beef and muscle as we can early and maybe beat them with our quickness, and some experience late.
Well, that's the thing, too, this D-line. And, Trent, I know you've followed this stuff forever, though, but you look at a guy like Jonathan Taylor, obviously Garrison Smith, who's a senior, Sterling Bailey, Ray Drew. A lot of these names on this defensive line were really, really highly touted guys. So this is kind of the time for them to show. And, again, Mays is a guy, he started football late. I don't think he started playing until he was like a sophomore or a junior. So, I mean, I see him as a guy who's got a lot of upside, too.
Right, and we got to take into account Mays was at a JUCO last year, and he took a redshirt year last year. So he's coming back from a year off the football field. I mean, he practiced, but he hadn't played in a game in over a year. So I think he's going to get better and better as the year goes, especially with more playing time, of course. And I think he's going to be a big factor in the LSU game this Saturday. Him and Jonathan Taylor in the middle.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, Logan, you're a young buck on campus out there. Is everybody jacked up? I went and had dinner with a friend last night downtown, and it wasn't too crazy. But I would imagine by tomorrow night, Thursday night, Athens, Georgia is going to be absolutely on fire for this one, huh?
Yeah, my wife and I, we live right in the middle of downtown, and we plan on getting off the streets by 7 or 8 tomorrow to avoid all that. But just all over campus, yeah, the mood is absolutely awesome. You can tell it's a big game Saturday, a big game week. All the guys out there that, all over the place that are all superstitious about college game day coming, I wish they could just experience just the extra energy and all the excitement around campus here. And in one of my classes, I knew it was big when a girl overheard myself and someone else talking about football, and she kind of jumps in and says, "I'm not even a football fan, but I can't wait to go this weekend." So it's people know it's big. People are excited for game day to roll in, I guess, starting tomorrow and put the set up there. And a lot of people are planning to go kind of get in the backdrop for some of the college football live broadcasts. And yeah, it's a different vibe this week. You can tell it's big time.
Yeah, it certainly is. And Greg, obviously these two teams have played in just so many huge games through the years, and again, we've talked about the parallels that these programs have had. It really is incredible. You go back to that loss in Baton Rouge in 03 that was just so tough, and if Georgia wins that one, how things go differently here. So this really is, Greg, kind of a measuring stick type game, I think, especially for Georgia. And also, for LSU, if they lose, they could get back into everything. But for Georgia, I mean, it's because of that loss to Clemson, Georgia's absolutely got to have this to keep those big-time national championship dreams alive.
Yeah, Georgia's out of the national championship chase if it loses this game. There was some talk today on the web about the possibility of still going to Atlanta and going to the SEC championship game, and of course those possibilities exist. But this is the game. I don't really understand why anybody's thinking about what happens after you lose here. What happens after you lose here is that you're basically playing for a consolation prize. But you were talking about the impact of this game on the program. I think it follows it is very close to the SEC championship game last year, and I think Georgia acquitted themselves well in that game. It's time to win it. It's time to win this game and control the destiny, put the team in the position that it wants to be in control as it goes on into the season. And this is the time to do it. It's not next week. It's not when we play Florida. It's now. And I think the team knows that. I'm hoping that they are looking for the same type of game that they got against Alabama, and they're ready for it because LSU is going to come to play.
They certainly will. Vance, it's interesting, and I guess, and I know Murray and Greg, us older guys, remember this too. Growing up with Munson and Dooley, we're just natural-born pessimists. I mean, you can't help it. And it's funny to me, LSU fans they're confident coming into every game. They really feel like they're going to roll. Do you get a sense that Georgia fans are really confident heading into this game on Saturday? Or are we hoping we're going to win, or do the Georgia people think we're going to win?
I mean, it's hard to tell. I mean, but I think anyone that I've talked to, JD, you agreed. I mean, North Texas came to play last week, and I really think that's a good thing. Although, because I wrote that I thought Gurley was hit harder by them than Clemson and South Carolina combined. But to answer your question, I do feel like obviously we wanted better results than what we got, although like you and DJ were talking about on the show Sunday, you take away the two special teams, gaffes, and it's the type of quality win we all thought we should. So, I think there's got to be a little bit of worry as that we still don't know what we have on defense, and I think that's kind of, should we home game LSU got to have it. We should definitely win this game, or else, we should be done. The season's over, like Greg said.
Murray, what's your take on the whole thing, kind of looking at Saturday?
Well, Jeff, I just think it's a crucial game. Like, Greg was saying, if we're going to stay in the national championship race, you got to have this. It doesn't knock us out of the SEC. If we lose to LSU, we're still, I think, riding high in the East, but it'll take so much out of us. It'll knock us out of the top 10, knock the Bulldogs out, and so it's just a game that they've got to, go from the start. And what scares me, kind of playing back on what Vance was talking about, I just saw today that LSU has outscored its opponents 62-3 in the first quarter. So, guys, we better brace ourselves to be ready from the start. This team gets us down. And JD, they have not only Jeremy Hill, but they've got 3 or 4 other backs. Terrence McGee, 212. Kenny Hilliard, 231. And the big fullback, J.C. Copeland, 272. I don't know of one football team that's got more horses in the backfield than them, so we better be in good shape on that defensive front because they're going to keep running them in and wear us down if we're not.
Well, you're absolutely right. It was Hilliard who had the big game in the Georgia Dome 2 years ago when he was a freshman. Shannon, where does LSU? They keep finding all these backs. I mean, it really is incredible. And then, of course, the number one recruit in the country is a back from New Orleans that they're probably waiting on there. But you can definitely see with Hill, he gives them just an added dimension. And then you got Beckham, the computer buster that we talked about there with that 109-yard missed field goal return for a touchdown in Landry. I mean, this team has done as good a job as anybody, and that's why they got the second best record behind Boise State in the nation over the last 10 years. They have done as good a job as anybody of reloading, and that's because, in my opinion, and it's a golden situation, they do a better job of recruiting their home state than any school in America.
I agree with you totally, and that's what I was going to say, to answer your question, is that they're getting that talent right there out of the swamp, and you know how crazy those folks are. I mean, they can kind of, keep them in there and feed them some possum and everything else, and before you know it, you got a kid like Copeland that's he's like 8'4" and 310 pounds and runs a 4.2. I mean, that's part of the legend too. You get those Louisiana kids, out there, and they talk about Texas football, and we got some great football here in Georgia and great football down in Florida, but there's some tall tales that come out of those Cajuns down there. But you're exactly right about Les Miles. I think Les Miles is the key to this whole thing. He consistently, he may have some staffing changes here and there, but he's consistently, selling these kids on what his mission and what his plan and how he's going to use them at LSU, and they just keep chugging along, and they are, Alabama and LSU and Georgia are all, elite teams, but you look at LSU and what Miles has done, and they are the head of the class for sure. And 1.2. I don't think that Georgia's season is over if something does go wrong this week, because if you remember, ironically, with the football gods, the last team or the only team with 2 losses to win was the LSU Tigers in 2007. They won the national championship, with those 2 losses. So Georgia still owning its own, having its own destiny to make it the SEC championship game, and we still have these computers that vote things out. So Georgia takes care of business. They can still make that championship game. But
JD, that's obviously coming from a guy that's not planning on going to Vanderbilt and Tennessee at 2-2.
That's no fun there. And again,
I got to tell you that's not something I'm looking forward to.
No, and I don't think it'll happen either. But I mean, I just I was in a debate with the 680 The Fan guys here in Atlanta this morning about it, and Sandra Golden her and I were on the same page with it, and the other guys were not. But I mean, ultimately, Georgia's got to win this game, like Greg said. This is, you've got 3 to start the season off, and you can completely change everything about this program. And what Trent was talking about too, with having these major 5-star recruits in and everything else, if you want to change some things, this is the game to change it, because you'll have run the gauntlet, and you're going to finish at 3-1, and that's pretty doggone good.
Hey, Trent, will McMillan and Carter, I guess they'll be the top 2 defensive prospects in the state and at the top of Georgia's wish list. But, and one of the things, I'm loving this recruiting class right now. And the thing I like most is that all the out-of-state commitments are blue chippers. I mean, like Sony Michel, the defensive lineman, Gilliard, I believe it is, from North Carolina. There have been too many years Georgia's gone out of state and gotten guys that like Minnesota and Florida International wanted. So I love what I'm seeing out of state. Now it's just a question of, can Georgia close with these in-state front 7 defenders, and then is there any way Georgia can go out and get, because I know I've read it's not a great year for in-state offensive line talent. I mean, are there a couple of elite O-linemen that Georgia might be in on also?
Well, with that, of course, they got the in-state. They got 4 offensive linemen already committed, which if Kendall Baker plays offensive line, that'll be the 4th.
Mm-hmm.
But David Sharp is the 5-star out of Florida, and that's the big one on the board right now. That's the one. I'm not even sure Georgia is looking or talking to anybody else at this moment. But he's the big one. He's and he was considered a Florida lock. He grew up a Florida fan, and his dad and Mark Richt have really hit it off. And like you said, this is a big weekend, because you come in this atmosphere, Georgia pulls out a win. It's going to make a big impact on guys like David Sharp, Josh Malone, wide receiver out of Tennessee, those guys. This is the biggest recruiting weekend of the year by far.
Yeah, good stuff, Trent. Logan, how about some of the players that you talked to so far this week? Is there kind of a quiet confidence there?
Yeah, there is. I specifically talked to Rontavious Wooten for a while today, and it was kind of funny when we talked to him, about what's going on with game day today. We had to remind him that College Game Day was even here this weekend. He was saying that they're extremely focused out there. He said that when he was a young guy, as a freshman. He sort of got kind of tied up into the big game atmospheres, but he said that they're out there. They know it's a big game, but they got, like you said, a quiet confidence amongst them. And I don't know if you saw, Rick had them go full pads for the third time this week, so they're out there busting each other up, almost like they don't even have time to think about it. So I liked what I was hearing from those guys, and it sounds like they're preparing as hard as they can to get ready to bust some noses this week.
Yeah, that reminds me, Murray will remember, too, the old Bloody Tuesdays with Coach Dooley. And, Greg, I think you kind of hit on something there, too. Last year the program took another big step, obviously beating Florida and getting in that game with Alabama, coming so close there, right? So that's the next step. Now it's time to take that next step. You have to win another game like this. Just being asked to the prom's not good enough now. Now's the time you got to show you're the king.
Absolutely, it's time to have that confidence to win the games you're supposed to win, and just go out and do it. There's one thing that I wanted to mention that I really haven't heard anyone talk about for this game, and that is the coaches, the head coaches, and that's one thing that I think is an edge for Georgia if this comes down to a fourth quarter shootout or grind out or whatever. Who'd you rather have, Les Miles or Mark Richt? I'll take Richt. I think that's an edge in this game. Miles has, he may just run out the clock when they're behind or something. Who knows?
But he's such a wild card. He is. And Vance, that kind of goes back, and obviously we've covered ad nauseum the kicking game woes through the years, and there just been disasters this year with Miles. They'll have a fake punt or a fake field goal or something there. And Vance, you kind of hit on it that I think with that onside kick, Georgia kind of caught Spurrier off guard there now. So, maybe we'll see some more chicanery out of the Bulldogs here to maybe catch the Mad Hatter off guard.
Well, I think it's going to be just like Spurrier. If we don't beat him to the punch, will we be ready for it? And there's no doubt that onside kick was, they scouted it well. They, if it was there, they were going to do it. So, I think we need some momentum early. I don't know that we want to be having to line up going physical football with them toe-to-toe. I don't. We're just not built. I wish we were, but we're not built to stay with that type of game, even if we do have the horses. So I would love for I think momentum can be huge, obviously, for the home crowd, and a pick, some sort of punt return. Although Damian Swan scares me back there, as you always say, Dan, or sometimes it just go down. He jumped around for 4 yards 4 times, and eventually one of those big, rangy, fast guys from LSU is going to light him up, and the ball is going to pop out. If it's not there, I wish he would show a little bit more caution. I don't know how you feel about that. Guys, y'all don't know this, but Danzer and I would just prefer not to field any punts.
Yeah, I think there's just 50-50 that it could just go wrong, and LSU's so good at pursuit. And Shannon, again, I know you watched the game, and when I saw it live and when I would watch the replay right after the play in the press box, 2 of those touchdown passes that Murray threw. Now, I understand that he understands North Texas. The one to Lynch, one of their backers nearly had it, and you can bet the guy from LSU, he's not just picking it, he's coming back. And the one to Conley, which was a great catch, I don't know how the kid from North Texas doesn't deflect it. And again, one of those LSU corners, they're going to one-hand that baby and be going back the other way. So again, yeah, he had a good game statistically, and I'm sure he knows this, and I'm sure Mike Bobo and Mark Richt have been pounding away at it, Shannon. But again, 2 of those touchdowns last week are picks, and probably at least one of them is going back in the other end zone if that's LSU.
Oh, I agree totally. I think something to watch, early in this game is, and Vance is right. Murray, is averaging around 20 completions a game. That's where he needs to be in this game. I think the Clemson game was as high at 27. But Murray in that case, instead of trying to see how strong his arm is to fit it in to that zone and try to go for a big play, is either sling it out of bounds or take off and try to get a few yards. And if he does that early, that's a good sign. That means he has his head in the right place, and he knows exactly that, hey, I am playing some guys that, they can make that extra step and that extra cut that can turn my big play into a big play for them. And that's of course has been the knock for Murray in years past. He got past that in the South Carolina game. I think he's matured to that level, but I definitely, Coach Rick and Coach Bobo definitely have been putting that in his ear. If it's not there, don't try to be the hero. And I think that's the big thing, is because he's got enough horses. I mean, the big difference I saw too in doing some prep is Mettenberger's averaging about 14 completions, and he's hitting about an average of 3 targets. Murray is averaging about 8 targets in those 20 completions, and that's a big thing. Mettenberger, if we can get pressure on him, he's looking 1, 2. Okay, I got to do something with it. Maybe a panic. Murray, at least, and you look at his head, I mean, it's moving all over the place, and he's going to every option he has, and I think he's got the maturity now to be able to take off like he did in North Texas, or to get out of the pocket and chunk it out of bounds.
Hey, Murray, but probably my biggest concern is with their defensive tackles, Ferguson and Johnson. I mean, these guys are beasts. Isn't it amazing how LSU reloads? They go from Lavallee to Dorsey to Ricky Jean-Francois to Drake Nevis, and then Brockers and Logan and Mingo, and now here they are with Johnson and Ferguson here. So, kind of going back, Murray, what we came up on, that Vince Dooley, Irk Russell ball, to me, maybe the most important part here, we know the shortest route to the ball in the quarterback is straight through the middle. I think that interior offensive line of Georgia is going to be the most important factor on Saturday.
That's for sure, JD. Ego Ferguson, one of the leading tacklers on this LSU team, a defensive tackle, like you say. Anthony Johnson didn't even start last year, but he's a run stuffer and a guy can rush the passer. So they've got 2 great big guys we've got to deal with, and it's going to be tough. The offensive line, I think they're going to have to step up like they did at the end of the Carolina game. Get some movement there, move them out of there. We got to control the ball. We didn't create much space for Gurley this last game because they were kind of loading up against the run. So yeah, it's going to be critical to handle that front line of LSU. I think if we could get a push against them, we'll do pretty well. Get our guys into the 5 yards in the second level and really cause some damage. Before I leave, Jeff, I think we need to say something. A sad day for the Bulldog Nation. Y'all might have saw that Paul Oliver passed away, 29 years old. And you always remember him as a guy that shut down Calvin Johnson with 1 catch or so, and just a sad day. He wasn't playing with the San Diego Chargers any longer, but he passed away. Apparently it's already in print. They took his own life. So Coach Rick was really shaken up by it today, and just a sad thing in the Bulldog Nation.
Yeah, it really has been. Of course, Scott Adams, who's just a great guy, he died last week. Reverend McBride passed away. So yeah, there definitely have been some sad times there. So I'm glad you brought that up, Murray. And he did. Boy, what a game! Held Calvin Johnson to 2 catches for 13 yards and an intercepted Reggie Ball to clinch the win there. So I think that's a great point that you bring up there, Murray. One other thing there, too, is we'll kind of start to wind things down there, too, and we'll go to Trent. And again, kind of talk about the recruiting with the like, and I am not kidding saying this, Swamp People is one of my favorite shows. And I've been saying for years, when it comes to LSU and recruiting, they are constantly underrated. They might be ranked 5th or 6th, and they should be ranked 1 or 2, because the bottom line is there are a lot of college scouts, whether it be for Rivals or Scout.com or ESPN or whoever it may be, who don't know how to get to some of these places, who can't get there, as opposed to going to a place like Atlanta or Orlando or Birmingham or Nashville. And then let's face it, there's, Jim Tressel might have come in with a sweater vest to a high school in Atlanta. You go rolling in down on the bayou, you got a shotgun waiting for you at the front door and saying, this boy's going to LSU here. So, I mean, to me, that's another factor that why, and the biggest reason Alabama has been the best for the last 5-6 years, and LSU in the 2000s. It just comes to reloading and recruiting, and because of that, I just think LSU's recruiting classes are constantly undervalued. Even though they're ranked great, I think they're even better than they come across in the rankings.
Well, yeah, and like you said, they do a great job in-state. Well, in-state is Louisiana, and if they're having that same class and they're the Florida Gators, and you just switch teams, well, they get the #1 class every year. So Lorenzo Carter here, a 5-star, is a 4-star in Louisiana. So you're exactly right. They are very undervalued. They get players. They reload every single season. They get big-time defensive linemen in from Louisiana every year. They get big-time linebackers in every year. That's the reason why they're so, dominant. But like I said, it's gonna be a tough game. I mean, they got all the tools to load the box up, stop our run, stop it. We're gonna have to do something to get 8 men out of the box. We're gonna have to throw over the top, and like I said, Aaron Murray. A lot of talks about Aaron Murray struggling in big games. Go look at his home record. His home record's completely different than struggling in big games on the road. So I look at Aaron Murray being the advantage over Vettenberger of what gets us the win in this game.
Well, you got to get Murray out moving by design, too. I think Murray or Shannon brought that up, too, and I've been preaching that forever there. Logan, how about, have the guys talked, or is this one of these, like, paranoid, ignore the elephant in the room? I mean, the deal with the special teams disaster, what's kind of been the take from Georgia's players on all that's gone wrong with the kicking game?
Well, I mean, it's definitely a concern of theirs, and that's one thing Rick talked about in his press conference yesterday as well, that he wants to get the better guys out there and the better men up front. So, I mean, it is what it is. I think Vance mentioned earlier, you take away those gaffes last week, and it's a blowout win. So it was brought up in his press conference, every single game this year we've had a special teams gaffe, whether it be a drop snap, a poorly snapped punt, or then the blocked punt against North Texas, as well as the giving up the 90-yard kickoff return. So it's certainly a concern. Rick definitely has said that there's been changes made this week, and he wants the better guys out there. So at least it's on his attention block, and hopefully see better results this week.
Hey, Murray, what do you think a Bloody Tuesday with Coach Dooley would have been like, giving up a block punt and a kickoff return for a touchdown back in the day?
I don't even want to talk about it. That's like an Alabama guy I see under the Y down here in Buzzard. He said if you did something like that to Bear Bryant, you didn't have to worry, or off the field or anything, discretion. You didn't have to worry about the administration and all. You just hated to report to practice on Monday because you would feel like you were living after he put you through 5 o'clock drills in the morning.
Oh, God, this has been great. I just want to kind of run through it, and all you guys have been fantastic. I just kind of want to get a last word from everybody, and you can give me a score prediction or kind of what you think big picture is going to happen. So we'll kind of reverse that. Logan, I'll just throw it back to you, and we'll lead off with you. Kind of your last word. What do you think?
Yeah, I think run the damn ball this week, like we should all the time. But as long as we keep those guys, as long as we can keep their defense, staying true to that, then Murray drops back every once in a while, a little play action, throw it down the field. I think our offense looks like it might have the advantage this week. So run the damn ball.
All right, Trent. What's your last word, my man?
I take Georgia 31-28. I think the biggest difference in the game is going to be Aaron Murray. I think they're going to stack the box, try to stop Todd Gurley, and I just think the pressure eventually is going to take a toll on Mettenberger, and Dogs pull it out at the end 31-28.
Shannon, what do you think, boss?
Well, I think Georgia's got some depth. I think these speedsters are going to get on the outside and run some track laps against them, and Gurley's going to run the ball. Quavon's going to have a big day, and I got my little ESPN board. We're going to go Georgia 38, LSU 27, baby. Woo!
Oh my gosh, 38. Can that be a blowout in this thing? Holy shit. Murray, can we get some Lindsey Scott magic in this thing here? What do you think, bud?
Yeah, I think so. JD, I had Georgia winning by 2 touchdowns back in June, but then I saw in the issue this week you had LSU in your rankings ahead of Alabama, so that scared me a little bit. So I dropped this thing down to 31-28. I don't know, Trent reading my mind or I'm reading his, but 31-28. Although when I put that on the website, 3 guys have already responded. I hope it doesn't have to come down to a Marshall Morgan field goal.
Hey, Georgia's field goal kicking, boy, these last 2 years has definitely been an issue. All right, Greg, your last word, my friend. And by the way, I love you just got the grand poobah chair sitting there, man. You look like the commander of the Starship Enterprise there. What you got?
Yeah, I feel pretty spacey sometimes. 34-21. Not even going to explain.
Wow. Well, 34 is always a good number. All right, Vance, you got the last word here. What do you think?
31-17 Dogs.
Wow.
I'm hoping the Bulldog Nation is going to have something to celebrate early, and they're going to keep on rolling all day, because I don't want to go to Knoxville next week 2-2, because I will not be happy.
No, nobody will. Well, guys, that was a lot of fun. I hope we can get everybody back here again. Murray, you're kind of old school like me. Is this your first internet TV show?
Probably is. A lot of radio, but It's a privilege to be on the Living Color with you guys.
Well, it was great, guys. I really enjoyed it. And thanks to Greg, Vance, Logan, Shannon, Trent, and Murray. Just an all-star cast. And my cast here, you guys, definitely blows away all those loudmouths on ESPN that just yell at each other. We only had one interruption, and that was Vance. He was the only person who butted in. So everybody did a great job tonight. Thanks.
They